Hello, everyone. Welcome to Blue Windows. For fun's sake, I showed a picture of Windows blue screening. So, diving in, we have the Windows Firewall. A lot of fun. This will be your very best friend if you are blue teaming for Windows. You can manage Windows firewalls from the GUI, command prompt, or PowerShell. There are two main types of Windows firewalls. So you have basic firewall, which is Windows XP Service Pack 2 through Windows 2003, and advanced firewall, which is Windows Vista and onwards. The very first firewall was called the Internet Connection Firewall, which was deployed on XP boxes. And by default, this was turned off for everyone, which created a lot of issues, which is why they pushed the basic firewall to Windows XP Service Pack 2, so that we would have less yikes with XP boxes. Some features of the two main types of firewalls are logging. You have the ability to create rules around different programs, so you can specify if you want to allow a program in or out, and you have pretty fine-grained control over what's happening on your machine or what's happening on your network. Just general pro tip, if you are blue teaming, script your firewall settings. It will save you ridiculous amounts of time in the future, and it's a lot more convenient to go through your script than to print out all of your firewall rules in the command prompt, and just a lot easier to change things. So, basic firewall. It's pretty powerful, especially when you compare it to the original firewall that Windows had pushed out. But there are a few limitations to it. So you can't specify if the port is local or remote. You're just generally opening that port. You can't specify direction, so you can't say inbound or outbound. And the logging settings are pretty limited. So if you look at the examples, the very first line is enabling the firewalls for all the profiles. In Windows, there are 3 different profiles. You have public, private, and domain, I believe, or network. And in the next 2 examples, you can see that you're opening the port for LDAP and LDAP SSL. And like I mentioned, you're just in general opening this port. You aren't specifying any direction. You can't specify if it's local or remote. So then we get to advanced firewalls. This gives you a lot more power over what your machine is doing. So the limitations that I talked about with the basic firewalls are now pretty much gone. So you can now specify if the port is local or remote. You can specify if it's going inward or outward. The very first example is showing just a deny all policy for your machine for every profile. And then the next 2 examples are giving you a demonstration of how to create a rule for a program. So this is explaining that you're allowing Firefox in and out from your machine. This can be super useful in competitions, gives you a lot more control over what is actually happening on your system if you have like specific applications that you need to be running. So the next 2 are for AD clients, and this is opening the port 53, so this is just allowing connectivity in and out. Here are the firewalls from the GUI. I don't typically use the GUI that much, to be honest. I like typing out everything. I find it to be faster than clicking if you're in a competition environment, that muscle memory. But the GUI can be pretty useful, especially for monitoring your firewalls. So if you just kind of keep track of your different firewall settings, you can occasionally notice, oh, hey, all of my firewalls are down, which is an issue. And then since you scripted your firewall settings before, you can just run that script again and you'll be good. So yeah, just good monitoring. Some commands that will help you. So these aren't everything that you need, but it's a lot. Very first is netstat. So similar to what you were taught in Blue Linux last week, this will display your connections to your machine. Task list will display the processes on your host machine. Task kill, you can kill a specified task. Net user, this will show you every user on your machine, allowing you to audit and kind of monitoring who is on your box. Net local group, you can audit local computer groups, so you can do net local group administrators. That will show you all of your administrators. Net group, you can audit domain groups. CH tasks, you can interface with the scheduled tasks. And system info, this will just kind of provide like a high-level overview of the system. There are also some WMIC commands that can be very useful for you during competitions. I recommend looking into those. But same with everything with different commands, you just want to use these yourself. So actually get onto your Windows box, run these commands, figure out what they do, figure out if they have any flags to set with them, just test them out, learn them before the competition. Sysinternals. These are a set of very powerful tools to help system administrators. It can also be extremely useful for incident response. I know that, at least for CCDC and other blue teaming competitions, they have been essential to me. They help tremendously. So the 4 that we'll be focusing on today are Process Explorer, Autoruns, Process Monitor or Procmon, and TCP View. So, Process Explorer. This is, as the slide says, Task Manager on steroids. This will give you detailed information about any and every process that's running on the system, including its threads, its TCP IP connections, the environment, the privileges, the strings, pretty much any information that you can get from and about a process, it will be shown here. You can grab important information like handles and loaded DLLs. So one thing that you kind of want to always do is to enable signature verification. To do this, you'll go under Options and then click Verify Image Signature. And this will check if the signatures of the process are invalid or if the processes even have a signature. So if you're suspicious of a process, you might notice some funky things going on. You might have traced it back to some suspicious activity that's happening. Suspend the process. Do not kill it. This is for a couple different reasons. You could have bad watchdogs over that process, and for incident response and going through and documenting everything that you found on your box, suspending the process will keep that process on your machine for you without it actually causing harm. And just as a general reminder, keep an eye on the network graph. Autoruns. So this will detect most well-known registry attacks. it will monitor WMI, schedule tasks, services, pretty much everything. It will miss a few important registry keys. So I recommend just looking into some common Windows malware and seeing the registry keys that they are affecting, or the area of the registry, the hive, that it will be affecting, and then monitoring those on your own. So you can do that using like regedit or a few other tools. If you look on the screen, you will see the typical display of Autoruns. As you can see, the different tabs will show you what you can kind of split the processes up as. So right now we're on everything, but you can kind of narrow it down to anything you want. So WMI, your scheduled tasks, pretty much anything. With Autoruns, if you do see something that seems a little suspicious, you can click on it and you have the option of going into Process Explorer directly to find even more about it, which I like. Process Monitor, Procmon. This will monitor your registry, your file system, and the process activity. It is kind of a lot when you first open it because it's pulling that information for every single process that's running on your machine. And Windows runs a lot of different things. And a lot of like things that Windows are running, if you're not familiar with the environment, it's going to look and feel kind of suspicious. But Procmon has amazing filtering. So if you're going to use Procmon, the most bearable way, most helpful way is to filter it. So an example would be a registry key or file is constantly being added. You can use Procmon to find what process is performing this action. So if you know what the registry key or file is called, you can filter directly for that registry key or file, and it'll show you only the results of that. Makes it super easy for backtracing and figuring out what the root cause of the issue is. TCP view. This is pretty similar to Netstat, just provides a different interface for it. It'll give you a little bit more info, and it consistently runs in a loop. So this is useful for finding beacons or injected processes calling out. With this, you can also directly close the connections. You can end the process through this tool. So pretty useful. Active Directory. So Active Directory throws a lot into the mix. If you're using Active Directory, you have to take that into consideration when blue teaming. So you're going to have different firewall rules. You're going to have to account for new users and groups with global access. And you're going to have different services that you also have to account for. It seems like a lot, but the primary things to focus on are going to be easy firewall and strict firewall rules. So easy, simple to type out, strict, not allowing unnecessary things in. You will have domain admins and enterprise admins, so make sure that all the controls for those are good. And group policy. Group policy will allow you to push out different policies to every machine on your network, on your domain. And then keep in mind that secondary services might be running, so IIS, DNS, and if you do have these secondary services running, you need to take them into consideration for your firewall rules, just in general. Know what's happening on your system, know what's happening on your network. Group policy. So this can be very, very useful for you if you are the domain controller and you actually know what settings to change. there's a lot of different options. With group policy, you have 2,281 different options, which is a lot. So you can create policies that will deploy to every computer on your domain, as mentioned before. Some of the main settings that you're going to want to look at are under computer config, Windows settings, and then security settings. You can have different account policies, so like password requirements, set a certain length, set a certain complexity, age. You can have account lockout policies, local policies, deny user and group logon. You can enable logging of important events. Logging is super useful in Windows. It is kind of hard to get a grasp on initially, but once you figure it out, you can be golden in your competition. And group policy will pretty much allow you to deploy anything security-based. Okay. So, as you can see on the slide, it has a nice little GUI, pretty typical for Windows, but you need to be careful with some of the settings. You can pretty easily lock yourself out, and this stuff is set to high numbers. So group policy is important to implement because it will override the local security policy. So as domain controller, and you'll have multiple clients on your domain, and those clients will have their own local security policies. And if you push out group policies, all of your clients will be forced to abide by those policies. So if you have a bunch of people who don't know what they're doing, highly recommend group policy. Process injection. This is a fun and scary thing. So attackers will attempt to hollow out space in other processes. That way they can inject their own into an already existing process. It's almost impossible to see unless you're looking at the individual threads, which we explained earlier, like Process Explorer is really great at looking at the individual threads for each process. And some ways to defeat and detect process injection: restart your computer. Injected processes aren't persistent, so a persistent process must inject them. Most of the time, if you just restart your computer, they're going to be gone, but that doesn't really solve the issue at the root, kind of just gives you more time to figure it out. You can find bad threads and suspend them. You can use this, you can do this using netstat and looking for different callbacks. You can also use TCP view. And you can use Process Explorer to look at the running threads. The threads can be pretty overwhelming depending on what process you're looking at. So I recommend getting a base feel for what the typical threads for the most common like Windows processes are. Look into the most common processes that get injected into. For example, LSASS is super common, and it's very, very important to your system. So if you kill the wrong thread, you could potentially be messing your own stuff up. For your 5-minute plan, very first thing you want to do is check for sticky keys. You get into the room of your competition, check for sticky keys. It's important. Don't log on to your computer unless you have checked for it. Very.
What is sticky keys? Is that like I spell mantra on my keyboard?
Yes. Yeah. You just like really don't want that. You don't want that residue getting on the rest of your keyboard. Once you get into your system, immediately change your passwords. So this is, yeah.
Can you actually explain what sticky keys is? For those that don't know.
I'm not good at explaining things.
Fan shift heat and not comes up.
It says something when we said it.
It's fine. Just keep going.
Okay. Okay. It's cool. Yeah. So, change your passwords once you get onto the machine. Pretty important because you kind of want to run under the assumption that red team is already in your box. Or if they're not, they're going to get there soon. Changing the password will help. Create a backup account. Create your own local account. That way, if you get locked out of your primary account, you have something to go back to, and you're not completely trapped out of your machine. Do some basic firewall rules. So what I typically do is I'll write 2 different sets of firewalls. I'll have one that is strictly for my 5-minute plan, so it's not too fine-grained, just more of a generalization for what I'm going to need to defend my machine. And once I finish completing my 5-minute plan, I will go back to my firewalls and I'll type out the more specific rules that I want. So next, you're going to want to audit your users, audit your processes, check for persistence, et cetera, et cetera. There are certain things that, depending on which version of Windows you're being forced to deal with, you're going to want to do. Whether that's changing different registry settings, whether it's disabling certain things, it's just important to know where the common vulnerabilities will be affecting your machine. So just do some research. Now, demo time.